Good evening. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Eugene.
Hi, Jana.
Hi, Jana.
Hello. Hi, good evening. Wanted to do a podcast tonight. We're really excited to have someone on who is a world of knowledge to talk about really it's timely after the RTE documentary because that's something that a lot of Ireland got to see. And we have some further information because I believe it was, I saw it myself. It was quite a short documentary. So we've done sort of a deeper dive into the information for viewers who have reached out to our groups for more information. I'll introduce myself and then our special guest on tonight. I'm Jana London, founder of the Natural Women's Council. I'm a mom of two small kids, and I've been campaigning for the last couple of years on some of the changes coming into schools that are quite dangerous for our children, and they have been done without a risk assessment. Lisa has been on podcast a few times. Lisa, with me. Lisa Mullen also does some amazing work with the Natural Women's Council, submits a lot of freedom of information requests to really uncover and prove how parents are kind of sidelined from the whole curriculum. And Eugene Garvin is a member of the Parents' Rights Alliance. Eugene is a retired engineer, and for the last 2 years, he's been researching this topic of the transgenderism in both schools and society. And he has so much information that this certainly, I don't think will be our last discussion on this. We're going to try to keep tonight to less than 45 minutes and then maybe do part two, part three, so we can really get the information out to our followers for people. So Eugene, I suppose before we start, do we want to talk about kind of our views on the RTE documentary, kind of after we
Yeah,
all saw that?
yeah, no, I think so. I guess we had seen in the news a couple of months ago, Dr. O'Shea had been expressing some concerns. It hadn't got an awful lot of publicity, and I guess it came to light last week with the Prime Time documentary, and I hadn't seen Dr. Moore, and didn't realize he was involved as well. And I think that was good. I think it was good by RTE to kind of show this to us and kind of give us some background as well. I think they did attempt to cover some of the basis. They had some detransitioners on, which was useful because it kind of
Yeah.
gave people another perspective on this that we perhaps wouldn't be aware of. And I think, I would have a lot of respect for Dr. O'Shea. And I think a lot of people who've watched RTE over the years would have seen him on other issues, other health
Yeah.
related issues. And I think he's a very professional clinician. I think he's very sincere, and he has genuine concerns, and I guess he felt they weren't being listened to by the HSE, and or by the minister, and I guess RTE have given him a forum now where he can share that with the rest of the country here, and I think that was really
Mhm.
important. So I think when somebody of his experience, as I said, and his level of capability and in this area, and he's been involved in this for quite a while, and he is referencing a lot of the latest data that's coming from Europe. And I think we have had a lot of information over the last 6 to 12 months in terms of concerns from countries that have been heavily involved in transgender medicine for a lot longer than anybody in Ireland has been. These countries have, Sweden, Finland, France, even the UK, the CAS report in the UK, and they've been expressing concerns. It's primarily with regard to minors and children.
Mhm.
We're not really talking about adults. I mean, adults at the end of the day can make up their own minds and in terms of what they want to do. But it's the concerns regarding children and the lack of, good data, good clinical data to actually justify certain approaches that have been taken. And that's what he's highlighting. And I guess it was good to see it. I think a lot of people probably don't have a lot of knowledge in this area. I didn't have a lot of knowledge a few years ago. Really didn't know much about it at all, and so probably the way a lot of people possibly going to watch this video mightn't know an awful lot. And I think just before we really get into it a bit more, just to let people know that we have included a lot of links in the description,
Mhm.
and so everything we're going to talk about here today is actually referenced in material that's in the description of the video. And so definitely encourage people to take a look at that separately offline, afterwards. So there's a lot of good stuff in there. You need to look at it, and we're not going to talk about anything that isn't actually got some references in the description. So that's kind of important.
That's great. And before we go, deeper into this, do you want to explain for people who are listening who may not know, Eugene, what is gender dysphoria?
Yeah, let me. I'll actually do a quick screen share, maybe just to kind of show people this. I think it's kind of it's kind of important. I think most people don't know what it's all about, and if you can see
I
that
did.
now.
I had never heard the term a couple of years ago, and now I feel like I know more about it than I ever thought I would. But it's something
Well,
really that's come so new to the surface and so fast. It's sort of like, where's it all coming from?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Again, I didn't know the term until a few years ago as well. Now, it had been known under different terminology under previous guidelines. So what we have here is actually a clinical definition that comes from the this diagnostic and statistical manual, which is used by psychiatrists. Most psychiatrists in the world would have a copy of this manual. It's updated every, I don't know, 10, 15 years. There's quite a large gap between when it gets updated. And I suppose this is the latest version, the DSM-5, and the definition that's in that document. And I suppose it kind of shows a number of different characteristics there in terms of people's marked incongruence as they describe it. People not feeling comfortable in terms of their body and the gender that they are. Um, and I suppose one of the key points about this is the 6 months aspect at the start there. This is not something that happens overnight. You don't feel this after a few weeks and all of a sudden, you've got gender dysphoria. That wouldn't be the case. The classical presentation for this was a lot of boys actually in the past, and it would have been experienced either quite a young age, that they would have shown, a number of the items on this list here, and that would be over an extended period of time, and hence that they would be diagnosed with this condition. And I guess there is a debate, and we'll get into it, between whether this is a psychological condition or whether it's something else, which is where the kind of ideological aspect comes in. Now, I think it is important to say, and I'll just maybe pull it up here, is that people presenting with gender dysphoria, it in itself may not be the condition. It may be as a result of something else. It may be as a result of any of the kind of items that are here. That could be either the root cause, or they could also be what they call a comorbidity. And it's quite concerning because some of these comorbidities could be quite serious. They might manifest by the child expressing, gender distress, etc. But there's actually something else going on with that child, and maybe it's in their past, or maybe it's actually still going on, and maybe some sort of abuse. And this is where the sort of treatment path that Dr. Shea was advocating comes into play, because you want to discover, has a child, is he suffering from something else, some trauma? There is correlation with autism. There's correlation with same-sex attraction as well. And, you can see the list of items there. And this is not even a complete list. So obviously in recent years, social contagion has come into play, and very much for girls. And I guess there's a whole presentation for girls that's happening now, adolescent girls, which people are using the terminology of rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is kind of a strange term. You'd wonder, where did that come from? Well, that comes from the fact that normally an adolescent or a minor expressing gender dysphoria would express it at a much younger age. They wouldn't suddenly start expressing it at 12, 13, 14, 15. And that's where the kind of rapid onset piece is coming from. A lot of people disagree with that, but I think we can see it in the numbers, and we can see that the numbers presenting as an awful lot more girls than there used to be. And we'll talk a little bit about, I've got some of the kind of increases in numbers over the years, but I think this gives you an idea of what's at play here. And there isn't one size fits all. I think that's kind of the point I kind of want to make here. And to say that it's just it's your gender identity, that's it, that's what you are, and missing out and not evaluating whether you've got one of these other comorbidities or one of these other things going on, I think is very dangerous for the child, because these things will catch up with them. If you're not addressing a serious issue that the child, in terms of, some form of trauma, for example, or as I said, I mentioned abuse. Abuse does come into play here quite a bit. And if you're not exploring that and dealing with that, and you're just going to affirm the child, bring them through the kind of gender affirming care pathway and not address a comorbidity, a serious comorbidity, well, then the suicidality of that child could be through the roof, and you're doing that child a huge injustice.
Yeah, I'll jump in
And there's
on the
plenty
if I can jump
yeah.
in, Eugene, on the sexual trauma piece. That's a really good point that you have up there, because I did a recent podcast with a child social worker, Crypto Rich, and he said a lot of children present with gender dysphoria, but when it's peeled back and the child is treated properly, it's from sexual trauma. And the way it links is that if I was a girl, for example, was sexually abused, when they start to grow up, they want to completely remove the parts that were abused. They want to remove their breasts. They feel dirty. They feel shamed. So although the root problem is sexual trauma, on the surface, it seems like gender dysphoria, but it's actually the incorrect diagnosis. And then when they go through the path of the hormones and the surgery, the problem only exacerbates. So that's a really good point you mentioned there. And also the other point is, the puberty, or the changing discomfort with developing body. Rather than teach children about, this is what happens in puberty. It's not all roses. It's not all lovely and comfortable, but it's natural. This puberty, which is often puberty is often the cure for gender dysphoria, yet we're giving kids puberty blockers to stop it. But I think more needs to be done maybe in school to talk about the biological changes of puberty, and parents need to support children with that, to say, your body will change. It's normal. It's healthy. It's okay. Because a lot of people may think, gosh, I don't like these growing parts, these changing parts, my changing voice for boys, etc. So it's really good visual that you have there.
Yeah, no, and I think I mentioned some of the links in the description. There's a link to the website where this comes from. I think there's a couple of organizations, GenSpect. I want to call out GenSpect. They cover this quite a bit. Stella O'Malley was one of the founders in Ireland of GenSpect. She had gender dysphoria when she was younger. And so she knows it firsthand. She knows the distress that she felt. And she can bring that to bear as a clinician now. So I think there's a lot of backup. I know people are coming at this maybe, without having any sort of background information, but there's plenty of sources. And as I said, we do have them in the backup. And we're just touching on some of them here. So I think this shows you, I think it isn't one size fits all. And I think if you're adopting an approach of one size fits all, which unfortunately I saw in the response from Tenny to the RTE Prime Time show, that kind of was neglecting what's on this slide here. And I think Dr. O'Shea is advocating to explore what's on here in the best interests of the child. And I think that's what we have to put number one. Let's park the ideology, please. Let's focus on the best interests of the child and get to the bottom of what the root is. And ultimately, you may find that it is gender dysphoria. That's what this child had. They don't have comorbidity. They don't have other things. That's fine. And if you've explored it, that's all you can do.
Eugene, if I can jump in on the
Yeah.
autism piece, I think an article came out about maybe 9 or 12 months ago that up to 90% of people in Ireland presenting with gender dysphoria may have been autistic. Now, I saw a more recent one that said 50-something%, but regardless if it's 90% or 50%, that's quite a high percent that may come across that they have gender dysphoria, but it's actually they're on the autistic spectrum. So that, I suppose, from a child protection perspective and what we're campaigning against of keeping this out, the gender ideology out of schools, is the children that will fall into this social contagion or the gender dysphoria will be those most vulnerable children who are on the autistic spectrum.
Yeah, no, and if people want to find that out, just put it in to just check on Google, just do a search for transgender and autistic, and you'll find loads and loads of data. Now, it's also same-sex attraction. I'll maybe talk about that as well in a few minutes, because you have children who maybe they're same-sex attracted. It's a confusion for them. They don't quite understand that. And again, if they're getting other influences telling them, oh, you might actually be transgender, whereas they might be just a little gay boy, and you just need to respect that and look after him as such. And unfortunately, that's not happening now, and we are seeing people getting transitioned to ultimately discover that they were just gay, and so these are the things. And I guess one of the root causes is social contagion. I think TikTok is absolutely abhorrent. I don't think any child should have access to
Keep your
TikTok
kids
here.
off TikTok. Keep your kids off the
Yeah.
screens, off the TikTok. They're seeing all these. I think I saw one that was this man with long eyelashes and makeup saying, come to the glitter family. And he looked all, you don't talk to your parents, come to the glitter family. It was like it's like a recruitment drive. These trans right activists recruiting children through social media. So my advice as a mom to any other moms is, I know it's hard, but try to keep your children off those channels and off those screens.
Yeah, no, and I think I have again a link in the description. It's interesting. TikTok in China doesn't have any of that. TikTok in China is totally educational. It's totally supportive of the children. It has none of the nonsense, none of the craziness that's on TikTok in the West. And there's good reasons for that. The Chinese are very cute. They're not going to show that to their own kids, but they don't care if everybody else around the world can watch total and utter nonsense. And for multiple reasons. It's not just to do with this issue. It has to do with so many other issues in terms of depression and self-harm and the sorts of dangerous things, that are going on that trend on TikTok and kids taking different forms of poison and all sorts of stuff. It's a madhouse. So, unfortunately, it's still allowed. And, they talk about misinformation. I just think this is so funny. You hear the government, you hear the WHO, right, talk about misinformation, and yet TikTok is legal and they can have rubbish out there on TikTok and nobody is stopping it. So yeah, get your kids off TikTok, please. So that's one big thing. Social contagion is a huge impact. There's no doubt about it. Things like friendship groups among girls, that's causing a problem. And again, that's been picked up on. There's research on that now that kind of shows that that's what's happening. And I do want to cover something else. I think the schools aren't helping, and the latest stuff in education isn't helping. And I'm maybe just going to talk about that for a minute. So this comes from the SPHE workbook that's out there now in the junior cycle. So just take a look at this and just read it for a minute. First, it talks about the sex assigned at birth, right? The sex isn't assigned at birth; it's acknowledged at birth. So what's this all about? It's talking about a child having that their gender is their internal feeling. What? Then it goes through. It could be male, female, both, or neither. This is what's being taught to children now. No, I
And
think
this is from age
certain
12, just to let our listeners know. This is in the junior cycle. It rolled out in September 2023 for junior cycle. The consultation for the senior cycle just was ended there recently. And then they want to go into the primary schools with this information down to age 5 in primary school to teach those little boys and girls they could be male, female, neither, or both. Now, my little boy is 5. He's in junior infants. If you told him he could become a girl or Spider-Man or Superman, they still live in a fantasy world. They're still in fantasy until their brain matures. I think it's like 16 or something. So
yeah. So this is something that's, as I say, it's been taught now. It's been taught in other schools in the UK. This has been rolled. We're at the tail end of this, in all honesty. So I suppose from the investigations I started doing into this, I could see this was obviously in the US for a number of years. It's come over from the US into Europe. It's been in a lot of the European countries. It's been in the UK. They've been teaching this. And Wales was the last of the kind of parts of the UK to actually get this. They got it in 2022. We've got it in 2023 now in the junior cycle. It's coming for the senior cycle and it's coming for primary schools. So this is the ideology. When people talk about what's the ideology, this is what it is. So they're basically saying your gender is innate. It does nothing to do with your birth sex. And it's up to you what you think, what gender you are. So how many Irish parents are comfortable with that? I guess is the question. And when did human anthropology actually change? Someone didn't tell me that human anthropology changed along the way that this was the case. So unfortunately, this is what Dr. Casey or not Dr. Casey, but Dr. Shea is up against and Dr. Moore. And this is what they are saying, they're trying to go the other side of this. But obviously, if you believe in this, you'll have a very different view to them.
Well, this
no, I
is
think
being
this is
taught as fact, isn't it, Eugene? That this is
it's
to
been
the
taught as a
children.
fact.
It's
It's
taught as
not been,
fact.
yeah,
It's 400 hours in the junior cycle of pure nonsense, non-scientific. You pick your gender. You don't have to have a gender. And what we have is belong to writing the curriculum. for our children, and parents don't have a say in it. And it is, yeah, it'll be in the senior cycle, and then they're going this year for the primary schools. So it's embedded, and I know it was also discovered that they are also putting this content outside of SPHE. So Jana, wasn't there a question in a math book of trying to figure out the cost of a chest binder? How would we figure out how much a chest binder costs? Well, you know, so even opting your child out of SPHE, if you walk through a secondary school right now and see the posters and the signage, there's nothing else going on but the rainbow and all of this ideology in the halls. And, you know, it's promoted to the schools and the principals as anti-bullying, when it's quite the opposite. So it's very, I don't know if parents really have a clue how embedded this is in the secondary schools, and they're gunning for the primary schools next.
Yeah, and it's so embedded that, just a side note is, Lisa, you alerted us, I believe, to this because your children are in secondary school, is they're replacing some of the, or moving some of the core subjects over to optional. And those core subjects that are being moved to optional are things in some schools like science, geography, home economics, art, music, and some languages and business studies. So it's not important about geography where I'm from, or it's not important science, you know, facts. What's more important is teaching a child they can be male, female, neither, or both. They don't need to learn science, geography, or any of those other important things. And that's just going to create a really dumbed down society if children don't learn those basic subjects.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, the justification was, you know, children need to appreciate the, you know, that there's trans people, etc. And there are trans people, been trans people for, you know, since time began, I guess. But that's not what this is. This is changing the fundamentals of human anthropology. That's what this is teaching children. And this is so dangerous. And, you know, as you mentioned, Jana, earlier, it's going to be more dangerous for the most vulnerable children. The children that are having a hard time and that are struggling, you know, that may be autistic, have some of those other comorbidities, and they're looking for something. They're looking for an answer. They're looking for something that's going to be a way out for them. And somebody will tell them that they were born in the wrong body, and they'll believe it. And that's the issue here. And then we're trying to bring in laws so that you can't even investigate that, that the child has other comorbidities. We're trying to bring in laws to stop that. I think there's an issue here. And I think, as I said, you know, what Dr. Shane and Dr. Moore were saying there, that's the starting point. There's a lot more to come, I think. So let's look on. I'm just going to move on to the next. These are from the same book, pages 160, 163, The Genderbread Person. This is, I think, version 4 of The Genderbread Person. There've been multiple versions of The Genderbread Person over the years. They've kind of adapted it as the culture and the ideology has adapted. And you can see from that image, that's actually targeted at a much younger age group than the junior cycle. So this is targeted at, you know, 4 or 5-year-olds. This is intended to ultimately go to that age group. And it talks about, you know, pansexual and all that kind of thing. And, you know, it's basically talking about disembodiment. So it's saying that your gender is separate from your body. It's this some immutable soul that you have, that's your gender, and it's separate from your body. That's what it's teaching. This is queer theory, right? That's where this comes from. And on the right-hand side there, you know, you've got this, I think, deliberately kind of gender ambiguous child. I'm not sure is it a boy or a girl. And that's kind of deliberate, I think, in terms of the book. And then they're kind of trying to figure out what their identity is. This is really unfair to children. This is terrible. And again, for the most vulnerable children, are they going to be the ones most impacted? Other kids just know what they are, and they've come from a family and they know the story, and they're, you know, they're confident, and they're just going to pass over this thing and they'll put up with it, and that's it. But the most vulnerable kids will get taken in by this. And I guess this is a fundamental stumbling block. It basically shows that the Department of Education and effectively the whole government are standing hand in hand with the HSE and the Minister for Health, and they're in direct opposition to people like Donald O'Shea, who's got the best interests of children in mind. And in my opinion, the government do not have the best interests of children in mind if this is what they're showing them. And they're not standing behind clinicians, experienced clinicians, who are actually just a front for a whole wave of other clinicians in other countries who are saying the exact same thing as they're saying, and evidence that's been gathered over many, many years. So yeah, this is not good. So I guess just to
There's
kind
been
of bring,
lawsuits,
yeah,
just to jump in, there's been lawsuits in other countries from children who have been led down this path and made the mistake of taking the puberty blockers, the cross-sex hormones, or having the surgeries. And there's been lawsuits against the state for this. So if this is being taught to children in our schools in Ireland, and a school learns, a child learns something like this in school and goes down that path, you can absolutely be sure there will be lawsuits against the Department of Education, against the principal of that school, the teacher of that school. I would encourage, if any child is harmed by this, they should go after everybody possible that led that child down this path.
yeah, and I guess I'll kind of, ultimately, I think the government are going to be accountable here, and I think if this continues as it is right now, and they continue with this, and harm is done to an awful lot of children, we are looking at probably an abuse scandal on a scale of even bigger than what we had before in this country. And we all know,
Yeah.
I'm a Catholic. I know the abuse issues we had, which were supported by the government of the day, unfortunately. And we could be heading into something like that again. And ultimately, it will be the government that has to pay. And ultimately, that means the taxpayer is going to be paying the money. All the government officials that exist now may have moved on. They won't be. They might have to appear at hearings, etc. But that's where we're going. If this continues as it is, that's where ultimately, and that's where it's going to go. It's kind of heading that way. There's a major class action lawsuit against the Tavistock. 1,000 different individuals have signed up to that. I'm not sure how that's progressing right now, but that's the kind of thing you're talking about. Now we don't have class action suits here, so it won't be at that level. But I think you will have individual parents and individuals who, once they grow up and they're not happy with what happened, will be coming back. Now, I put this up. This slide comes from Lisa Littman, who's the person who has the papers on the whole rapid onset gender dysphoria. And she's kind of got the two side-by-side views here, the view of the innate gender identity on the right-hand side, and then the one on the left-hand side, which is more looking at multiple causes. It isn't one size fits all. There's comorbidities going on here. This child has got other things that you've got to investigate. Context, as you say, there is important. Whereas, if you're taking the innate gender identity, context isn't important. You ignore it. And you're even going to bring in these laws on conversion therapy to stop you investigating those things, which is, I think that's outrageous personally. But let's see. It didn't come up in the primetime program. It should have come up. I'm surprised that Dr. O'Shea didn't raise that issue of the conversion therapy ban in the context of gender identity. I think people are, supportive of it in the context of same-sex attraction, but I think for gender identity, it's a very different story, and it really does play out when you start looking at the two things here side by side.
Do you want to give us
Sorry,
a quick?
Eugene. Sorry, I was just gonna, maybe you're going to say the same thing, Jen. I was just going to say, could you do a 30 seconds on the conversion ban legislation and how that, because I'd say a lot of people aren't aware of that, like how that's going to play into this whole issue.
Yeah,
You read my mind,
well,
Lisa. So really, what is conversion
no,
therapy? Absolutely.
no,
Just for people who don't
I
know.
think a lot of people, I think a lot of people probably aren't aware of it. There is a bill going through the Oireachtas at the moment. The original scope, I think I looked at this bill maybe 2 years ago, and the original scope was in the context of gay conversion. And I think a lot of people would resonate with that. There was some horrendous stories of things that were happening to gay people to try to convert them. And I think most people would say, that we shouldn't be doing that, and hence would have been supportive of that bill at the time in that context. Now, the context of the bill has been updated in the text, and it's now brought into scope the whole area of gender identity. And basically, in the context of gender identity, is so if a child, asserts that, they're a boy and maybe they assert they're a girl, that's their gender identity. Now you're not allowed to engage, or you wouldn't be allowed. And obviously, all the specifics need to be worked out. But basically, if you were to engage in psychotherapy with that child to get to the root cause of their dysphoria, etc., that could be seen as conversion activity by not affirming them. and trying to discover the root cause of their gender identity, and then in ultimately with a view to making them happy with the body that they're in, that could be seen as conversion therapy under the new legislation. And I guess that's the issue. So basically that legislation would be looking to outlaw what Dr. O'Shea is looking to do, like the approach that he wants to take, which he's not in agreement with the HSE. And you can see why, because they're not on that page. If they're going to bring in this conversion therapy ban, obviously the whole government and the HSE are on the same page. So there's no surprise that the HSE are taking that approach. So that should have come up in the primetime show, and I think there does need to be a follow-up. There will be, because this does need to come into the public forum, and people are going to need to comment on this bill. So I think it will become visible in January. I understand it. It's probably going to go to the next phase where it becomes visible. People can look at you can look at it online now. The text is there. But I think there has been no discussion or very little discussion on it, and the significance of the gender identity piece of it, I think, is what I want to highlight here, and I think it's hugely concerning. I just think it is, but it's not inconsistent with the right-hand side of this particular chart that Dr. Littman has put together. It's consistent with this approach, so you can see where it's coming from. The other point here is desistance, and I guess that was discussed on the primetime show. They did talk about it, and historically we've seen desistance numbers, and they're different for boys and girls, and they change over time, but they're typically around the kind of 80% range when people go through puberty. So when somebody goes through puberty, they ultimately get comfortable, and they get there's a confidence that comes with coming out the other end of puberty. I guess that's part of it as well. And then people, they desist. They're not, the dysphoria
So
is
Eugene,
gone.
sorry, by
Yeah,
desist, you mean these children go back to their
they're happy that
born sex?
they could have been, they're satisfied in their own body. They may
Yeah,
be gay, like
yeah,
they've discovered that they're actually gay or whatever.
yeah.
So
Or
these are different. Sorry to cut in, Eugene. These are different than
yeah,
detransitioners. So desist is ones who are confused with
yes,
gender dysphoria, think they're confused, don't do any drugs or surgeries, and just grow out of it. Whereas detransition, they go through the whole process, the transition, whether it's the drugs or surgery, and detransition. But desist, they haven't had any interventions. Is that right?
correct. That's it. No
Okay.
medical intervention, and in general, possibly very little intervention at all. They call this the kind of watchful waiting, kind of a term that's used. Now, some of them may have needed a degree of psychotherapy, because depending on what, the root cause of their gender dysphoria, they may have something else going on, and that did need care and attention. So we had an example. So there was a desister on the primetime show. There was a young girl who desisted. She hadn't gone through, and she was happy. And she was happy that she desisted. Now, we did also have a detransitioner on the show, which was good as well, to kind of see, because that's effectively somebody that's desisting after they've transitioned. Now, the problem there is obviously if they have gone through a lot of medicalization, they're going to have to live with those consequences. But I think this is interesting.
I had the
On the right-hand
opportunity
side,
to attend, sorry to interrupt there, Eugene. I had the
yeah,
opportunity to attend the 2-day GenSpect conference back in April down in Kerry, and I had the opportunity to meet Richie, who was on the RTE documentary,
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
the young man who had
that's
transitioned
right. Yeah,
to a female and was going back to male, and he was such a lovely, brave person to speak out. But the people who have detransitioned are also being silenced. So like us who are speaking out against this agenda and against the dangers, the young people who have been led down the path and regret it and want to detransition, they're also being silenced.
they are. So again, in the description, there's a video. Chloe Cole. Some people may know Chloe. If people have been involved in this area,
Mm.
they know Chloe Cole, a detransitioner from the US, from California. She's very active, and she's making basically a statement to the House Committee in the US. Well, a 5-minute video, well worth a watch if you want to get a flavor for that. I think the fact that the desistance is totally rejected here, that's basically rejecting the truth. I'm sorry, the desisters exist. Uh, Stella O'Malley's a desister, right? These
Mm.
people exist.
She is, yeah.
So you can't just rejecting it. I'm sorry, guys, you're rejecting the truth. So I think this is unacceptable, and I think that approach on the right-hand side has problems, lots of problems, and unfortunately, the WHO are bought into it, our government are bought into it, and I think a lot of us have opinions on the WHO from recent experience, which are not positive ones, and we also know that they're engaging in a major land grab right now, or power grab, if I want to call it that, with their treaty and the amendments.
It's
So that's a
important to
whole
note,
other issue.
Eugene, that it's important to note that Tedros and Dr. Mike Ryan from the WHO actually were in a meeting with Leo Varadkar yesterday, and Michael Higgins, our
Right.
president, trying to push
Interesting.
through the WHO treaty. They didn't announce they were coming over, but I believe, if I were to guess, they think that perhaps our Irish constitution is a little bit too strong to give our powers away to an unelected global entity. So we're really going to push to stop the treaty, because from other podcasts we've done, people can see and they can look up the WHO standards of sexuality. It talks about first sexual experience at age 9. It talks about teaching age 4, masturbation, and all sorts of things that would not be child friendly in any way. So we have to absolutely stop Ireland from handing over the reins to the WHO.
100%. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole, we could do a whole thing on the WHO, so that's maybe for another day.
Maybe we will.
Yeah, I think so. I think then you look at the different approaches there, and again, you've got the Dr. O'Shea approach on the left-hand side, which is all about getting to the root of the problem, doing all the exploratory work you need to do with the child in the best interests of that child. On the right-hand side, it's in the best interests of the ideology. I'm sorry, that's what it is. It's not the child. They don't care about the child. And I'm sorry, there's an issue here. There really is. People need to call it out. And we have a problem because our government isn't calling out. They're totally bought into the right-hand side of this thing. And that's a
Eugene,
huge problem.
do you think as well, where Ireland is very much I suppose it's a playground as well for big pharma, and we have, for example, one example that comes to mind is Minister Helen McEntee is trying to push through the hate speech bill and push and try to stop us from talking about things like this gender identity. But if you look at her husband, he's a director, I believe, at AbbVie, which make puberty blockers. So if you kind of follow the money trail, that could be a whole different conversation for another day. But one of the reasons I think they're trying to stop people speaking out and exposing the dangers is because there's an awful lot of money to be made from a child who's confused. I did a recent podcast a few months ago with Scott Nugent, who was the star on Matt Walsh's documentary. And Scott quoted that every person that goes through a transition between all the drugs and the surgeries and everything is over $1 million, €1 million to the pharmaceutical industry. So there's an awful lot of money to be made by leading children down to these drugs and these surgeries.
Yeah, no, and unfortunately, the puberty blockers for minors are at a different price point than for adults, significantly different. So they're making much higher margin on them. So there is a vested interest in there, and again, you could do a whole show in terms of the pharmaceutical industry, which is huge in Ireland. It is huge, and it obviously has an influence in Ireland. I'm absolutely sure it has. But again, there's an issue there, and I mean that is a conflict of interest. I think that's a huge conflict of interest, to be honest. And yeah, and I think that hate speech bill is. They talk about it in the context of other things like immigration and everything. I think it's trans activists who are pushing that, and they're trying to push people not talking about this thing. They're the people. It's all about this. I don't think that's what we've seen in other countries. That's what we've seen in countries who've adopted that approach. Unfortunately. So I think I've put the video. I really recommend anybody who's watching this to watch the Dr. Lisa Littman video. The link is in the description. She goes through all of this. She'll talk through it much better than any of us are talking through it, because she's got the background, she's got the research. So I think I would encourage people to take a look at that, and I think it'll give you another perspective and on this whole thing. And I think you can see there now why there's such a conflict between Dr. O'Shea and the HSE, because they're literally on the two sides of this fence. That didn't quite come out in the program. He kind of talked about, it's based on ideology. This is what he meant. This slide here actually summarizes the two different approaches, so you can understand acutely aware of the right hand side of this because he's dealing with it.
And Eugene, if I can just cut in, I may be being a
yeah.
bit cynical based on what I've seen the last couple of years kind of looking into this. But when I first saw the RTE documentary, I got a bit cynical, or a bit, I suppose, critical thinking went on. We saw in the news about a month or two ago that Dublin is going to open up its own gender affirming care clinic. So I thought,
Yeah.
if RTE had an agenda, because RTE has not been on side through this. I mean, they have
I
absolutely
know.
vilified people like myself and Lisa and all of us who have tried to get these books out of the libraries, the school curriculum. They've absolutely called us every label under the book. So could they be presenting this on this recent documentary so people say, oh, that is really dangerous, and oh, the Tavistock is bad. And then when they roll out and say, we have a solution, problem, reaction, solution. We're going to open our own ethical gender affirming clinic right here in Dublin. Isn't that just great? So there's also, you know, possibly another agenda with RTE, which, you know, we haven't trusted them for the last several years. So.
I know. Well, I'll be honest. I think I would be happier that we had a clinic here run by the likes of Dr. O'Shea and involved and certainly driving the ethos of the clinic than say sending them off to the UK to some potentially unknown clinic or to Belgium, right? There have been children being sent to Belgium now. I think I'd be a lot happier with that, to be honest. But yeah,
it's
I
probably
know.
the lesser of the two evils.
Yeah, it is the lesser. Now, it's different if you're going to have a clinic here which is not going to listen to the Dr. O'Shea's of this world, then I think I would have my concerns as well. But yeah, so I think the whole thing, I mean, let's just maybe move it along because I think I want to talk a little bit about the gender dysphoria epidemic, if I call it that. Obviously, people won't say, "Oh, it's not a disease, so it's not a condition, it's not an epidemic." This is just to give people the numbers, an example of the numbers. So, if we go from 2022, which is the latest data we have from the GIDS service and the Tavistock, and if we roll that back 10 years, you can see we've gone from about 250 referrals 10 years ago, which would be 2012. So we don't have 2023 numbers yet. And that was mainly boys. And it would have been younger boys as well who were presenting. And that would be in line with the kind of classical presentation of gender dysphoria over, say the last 30 or 40 years. That would have been the kind of run rate or kind of numbers. Now that's risen to 5,000 in 10 years, like a 2,000% increase, 20 times. That's pretty scary. And you can look at the numbers on the left-hand side there from the US. And I guess and the numbers in the UK doubled in the last between 2021 and 2022, they doubled. And you can see the little spikes that are going on there on the left-hand side in the US as well, in Washington there, New York. Look at the increase there. There's a sudden upturn there, kind of post-COVID, I guess. That's just when we came out of COVID, and we're probably seeing the rise coming out of that. These are frightening numbers, and I think the concern would be that, and these countries have been teaching the curriculum, of gender theory for years. They've obviously had exposure on social media. Now we have that here as well, and I think if you bring the two of those together, and then they also would have had the availability of the services, people like Planned Parenthood, for example, in the US. You can just walk in and you'll get puberty blockers on a first visit. And they had the service in the UK, the GIDS Tavistock service, which just became overloaded eventually. I mean, and there's a whole book about that. So that's one of the books actually is the story of the Tavistock. So again, that would be on the reading list. But I guess the point of this is that there's an issue here. The numbers have gone through the roof. And to be honest, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised if kids are watching TikTok and if they're getting taught what they're getting taught in schools. I don't think there's any surprise these numbers are going through the roof.
And
Do we think
Eugene,
this is a good? Yeah.
Sorry to cut across you. I think we didn't emphasize it enough when we were discussing the schools. It's not just being taught. That's probably, like you even said, yeah, most kids will be able to look at that and glide past it. What's probably far more harmful in the schools is these children. If you are trans, you are elevated, you are feted, you are special, you get extra attention. There's special groups for you. There's rainbows everywhere for you. People have to be your ally. So it has
Yes.
been very clever. So a child who is troubled and is lonely and confused sees
Yeah.
that within their school, they have a special status if they come out as trans, and that everybody has to
Yeah.
be their friend, everyone has to support them, everyone has to stop in their tracks because they are the special ones. So I think that is such a huge part of why this trend has gone up. It isn't just giving information, it is
No,
making
no,
them the special ones.
no, it is. I put a link to the LGB Alliance, right? So the LGB Alliance is a lesbian, gay, bisexual alliance. I think it's primarily in the UK at the moment. And why is there such thing as an LGB alliance, you might ask? But the reason is there's lesbian and gay people who feel they're not being represented by the LGBTQ plus organization or frontage that you see now. When people come on the television and they say, I'm representing the LGBTQ plus community, there's people in that community now who would fall under the umbrella who say, no, you're not representing me anymore. You're representing the trans community.
And
And
transgenderism is not a sexual orientation. So
I know, and
how have they been
exactly.
brought together? What, you know, we have
It's
sexual orientation and then gender dysphoria, and they put these groups together. And yes, I think the gay community,
yeah,
many of them have had enough.
they've had enough, and they've had enough in the UK. So there's LGBT Alliance had a recent conference in the UK. And again, I would encourage people to go to their YouTube page and look at some of the videos. Look at the one from schools. They talk about what's happening in UK schools and exactly what you said, Lisa. Initially, you may have young girls who said, you know, I'm lesbian, and then 2 weeks later they're trans, because and their whole kudos elevates. Their status is elevated as a result. So they're obviously attracted to it. I mean, this is very attractive. You're now part of some people would say it's like trans is the new gay, it's the new
Yeah.
trendy, thing, and but there's huge concerns among the lesbian gay community associated with this. And so that LGB Alliance, they have their conference, look at the video, particularly the one about the schools, and it's pretty shocking actually, some of what they talk about in that video of what's happening in the UK. To be honest, I don't think it's hugely different here. So
No,
that's kind of
Eugene, if I can just, I could just cut in.
yeah.
I was just looking for this article. You probably can't see it here, but there's an article I just Googled. Lesbian belong to, and under news, they recently came out in October, 7th of October, 2023. And this is here in Ireland. A lesbian woman who attended youth meetings in 2016 said there was pressure put on to attendees to come out as non-binary or transgender. And this lesbian woman had attended the Belong to youth meetings. And basically, you hear that expression, they were trying to trans the gay away. And that's exactly what happened to this woman who went to those meetings. That's what they were attempting.
Yeah. No, and that term is being used quite a bit now. So you'll hear that term at that conference, actually. So while we're listening to it, it's a different perspective. These are lesbian and gays talking, bisexual people talking about this. They have a gay teacher on there. He talks about his experience in the classroom. He found it extremely difficult. His feedback was the children in the classroom some of them were extremely distressed. They were extremely distressed, and that's why and then they're expressing this gender dysphoria. And unfortunately, you bring in these other people, and all of a sudden, the answer to the children is, "Oh, you're transgender," and that becomes the single answer for all of those kids who are suffering from all sorts of other issues as well, unfortunately. And he was quite he was quite shocked by it, and he actually left education. He couldn't stay there. He found it too hard because he wasn't getting the support either. Now, I think things are changing in the UK. I think there was on Grip Media today, they're talking about the fact that you won't have to use pronouns in the UK. I think they're rolling back on a lot of these things. And the whole issue of child transitioning in the UK. I've got a link, again, there's a link in the description, which will talk about Sex Matters, have an article basically saying they shouldn't be doing transitions in school, social transitions, that is. So take a read of that. It's applicable to the UK. It's based on the UK law. It's not based on Irish law. It's a different situation here. We don't have an equivalent document for here, but that's really interesting, I think. So I think the UK are starting to kind of maybe wake up to this and see that there's an issue and trying to sort it out. but it's not before time, to be honest. So this is just showing the pandemic issue. I guess the online resources is kind of really, the next question is, where do you go from here? That's kind of the question for people. And I guess what I want to do is maybe just I'll walk people through a few of the items that I want to suggest people take a look at, because there's a wealth of material out there. That's the first thing to kind of get a feel for. And I think there's no shortage of things that you can actually resources that you can go to. And so these will all be in the description, so people can take a look at them there. You've got the Parents' Rights Alliance. Just going to plug them, obviously, put a link to their site. That's obviously specific to Ireland, and they'll have guidance specifically to what's happening here. And keep in touch with that, because that will follow what's happening in Ireland. That'll follow what's happening in the schools, the new curriculums, all that kind of thing. GenSpect, I mentioned, their tagline is a healthy approach to sex and gender. And, they're trying to have that more expansive approach. It's not one size fits all. So well worth taking a look at. Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine. So if you are looking for papers, for medical papers, research papers, that kind of thing, you'll get it here. And they'll have references. Part of the problem you'll get with a lot of medical papers and stuff like that is they're behind a paywall, and you'll only get the kind of little synopsis piece. Most of the papers that they publish, you can get the full PDF, you can download it, and they're published by the regular journals, etc. So definitely check them out. They've got a lot of good links. So take a look at that. Transgender Trend, that's a UK website, and it just covers transgender news. What's
Sorry
happening.
to interrupt you, Jean. Do you have those links? Are we going to put them in the description? Do you have a slide with those, what you're referencing there? I just see online resources on the slide, but do you have anything there?
Okay. Sorry, yeah. So if you're only seeing the slide, let me just share. Let me share the other screen. Then I need to share the
No
other
problem. That's
thing. Let me
okay.
just do. Thanks for flagging that. Let me just get the other document with it. Allow me to show it. Yeah, here it is. Sorry. Yep. Let me share that. Sorry. There we go.
That's okay.
Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
So it's just text. This is what will appear in the description. Just want to highlight some of these things. So there's a number of videos in there just to give you a flavor. Obviously, a lot of history in the US. And I guess what's happening in the US now is they have an opposition in government in the US, which we don't seem to have in Ireland. So, now that's got its problems as well. So I'm not going to talk about the rights and wrongs of Republican and Democrat. But the point is that there are two sides. And so you have one side actually going to debate the other side, which is good. From a political perspective, you need that. That's healthy. So there are some videos there that talk about some of the committees that are ongoing in the US, worth watching them. As I mentioned, Chloe Cole's testimony is well worth listening. Dr. Miriam Grossman, she does a 5-minute piece just talking about the kind of ideology aspect. This is a lady that's been working in psychiatry, in child medicine for 45 years. So you need to be listening to these people. These are people that know what they're talking about. Talked about Dr. Lisa Littman's video, that's there. Talked about the whole TikTok thing, just one video. I think we're going to need to come back to TikTok, because I think it's a problem. And I think the general assessments from what I've looked at recently, I don't think any child in Ireland should be looking at TikTok. Shouldn't be there. Just get it off the phone. I'm sorry. It's not fit for consumption by a child. GenSpect, LGB Alliance, as I said, they've got their YouTube channels, and Forbes Breaking News are very good as well. And we've also got Gript Media, not to forget our own local Gript Media in Ireland. So worth checking them out as well. I don't think I've got a link on here for them. I've got a number of articles. So I've got the response from Tenny to the RTE Prime Time, so people can take a read at that. And I think you'll kind of see from that, it's just really reinforcing, I suppose, their position. So that's what it is. And I mean, I would hope that Dr. O'Shea might actually give a response to that, maybe in course. So kind of leave that up to him. These basically are websites that talk about things we've already covered in the video. And then a few links down here talking about what Denmark, Denmark are one of the most recent countries in Europe. Now, Denmark's a very liberal country from these social type issues. And they've decided to roll back on the whole transgender care for minors. You know, that's the issue. It's for young people. And so they've been the latest to come into the list to have concerns there. Sex Matters, Helen Joyce. Some people may be familiar with the author Helen Joyce. She followed with Sex Matters. So she's got a couple of things there talking about banning talking therapy. That's the ban on conversion therapy in the context of gender identity. And then the whole issue of socially transitioning. And again, she's got a kind of a paper up there on that. And then I guess we get to the books. So I've got a kind of a nicer picture maybe for the books. So let's put this up. It is Christmas time. Maybe these are not the books you want to be reading at Christmas, but I put them here as stocking fillers. So if you're a parent, or maybe you're a grandparent, or maybe you're a godparent, you might want to either get one of these for yourself or get one of these for somebody in your family for whom it might benefit. I think these are pretty good. The first two books there from Miriam Grossman, I've gone through them. Lost in Translation is a long book, like it's a big read. You might want to get the audiobook version of it. But it's really good, and it gives a lot of practical advice for parents in particular. Now, Dr. Grossman, she does take a huge parent view on this as well. So obviously she's hugely concerned about the children, but she also deals with the parents, she deals with the family. So she brings all of that into that book. So well worth a look. When Kids Say They're Trans, that's a new book from a few of the people involved in GenSpect, from Stella O'Malley and Sasha Ayad. Again, worth looking at and giving you a perspective, again, for parents. This really should help parents. Helen Joyce's book I've got on here, which is definitely a good read, a slightly different perspective on it. And she covers things that perhaps the others don't cover it's covered in a slightly different way. You'll never look at the film The Matrix again in the same way when you read that book. If you've ever read it, you'll know what I mean. So if you take a look at that. And then the book on the right-hand side here, Irreversible Damage, Abigail Shrier, again, a very good book. And what I would say to you is, if it was well worth getting these books, but it's also well worth looking up online any of the authors of these books. So if you do a search online for any of these authors, Abigail Shrier or Miriam Grossman, and look at their videos, which would be shorter. You get a 20-minute video perhaps, which is just easier to consume in the short term. They're well worth looking at. These people are very good. A lot of these people are clinicians. They've got a lot of experience, a lot of research, and they reference that. So well worth looking at. So as I said, this is for your Christmas stocking or for somebody else in your family's Christmas stocking, perhaps. Well worth looking at these. I think there's a couple of other links as well outside of these books. I just picked these ones because these are the ones that I'm familiar with. There's a few other good ones in there as well, which I haven't actually had a chance to look at yet, but I think I would recommend based on looking at the reviews, etc., and the content. So I think this is kind of, to kind of wrap it up, I think it's, the prime time was really good. And I think I don't want to dismiss it in any way. I think it was really good. It was good to give a forum to Dr. O'Shea, and I think hopefully people got a better understanding from that. For some people, it was maybe the first time they've ever seen this stuff. And hopefully, if they look at some of the resources that we're going to have in the description, they can learn a bit more. And hopefully RTE do a follow-up. I think they do need to, they kind of left it hanging. We didn't hear from the HSE. We've got a response from TENI now. I think we need to see a more concerted response from the HSE. And I think obviously with this whole issue of the ban on conversion therapy, which wasn't discussed, is going to need to come into play as well, because I'm sure Dr. O'Shea would have an opinion on that. So I think there needs to be a follow-up. RT, thanks for doing that one. I think you need to do a follow-up one. I think it would be of use to everybody. And I think there's plenty to cover. There's plenty of ground to cover yet. And I
Eugene,
guess,
just if I can jump in, I know, so it's very interesting that the experts are saying one thing, but the trans right activists and the government and HSE are pushing something different to what the experts are saying. And there's also a couple articles that came out, some of the trans right activist NGOs, which get a lot of publicly funded money, such as TENI, came out very disappointed in the RTE documentary, very disappointed in Dr. O'Shea's views, but people can read those articles as well. I know we have links to those. You may have popped in there the TENI response to
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, as I mentioned earlier, TENI's response is fully consistent with the viewpoint of the innate gender identity and all of that view. And when if you listen to the Dr. Lisa Littman video, then you'll kind of know what side Tenny sit on. You'll know what side Dr. O'Shea sits on. It's unambiguous, and there are two different things. And unfortunately, people have conflated this. I think this is the first time in the media that properly the two sides have kind of become apparent, that there are two sides to this thing. People would have said, "Oh, there's gender dysphoria. Yeah, we've got to look after people, etc." And no, there's no debate about that at all. And there's no debate that there's adults who are adult transsexuals out there, who absolutely need to be respected and looked after in whatever ways is appropriate. And people ultimately need the choice as an adult to go and do whatever they wish to do. So we're not talking against that. We're talking about children here, and I guess we're just talking about something that we've seen in the culture, in Western culture, that's come from America. This has come from America. I'm sorry, it has. It's invaded the World Health Organization. It's invaded a whole load of other medical institutions around the world, and without the actual clinical evidence to back it up, unfortunately. And people are just trying to make their way now and try to piece it together. And a lot of those countries in Europe, I would seriously listen to them, because these countries had significant transgender affirming care in those countries for a number of years. The Nordic countries, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, they all were big into this, hugely into the whole gender affirming side of things initially, and they've rolled back on that based on evidence and based on lack of evidence in terms of some of the therapies. So there's a very good reason for that. So people, I have huge respect for the Nordics. In my past career, I would have worked with people from the Nordics in the past. They're very meticulous people. They're very smart people. They don't do things for, they're not going to say something unless they've got the backup in terms of research and the whole clinical side of it and hence they're getting worried, because they recognized that they were doing treatments for which they didn't have the clinical backup necessarily. And they were kind of following the standards of care at the time as they were understood globally, in good faith. But unfortunately, then they discovered that there was harm being done to some children, and hence they've rolled back on it now. And I think we need to take heed of that. We need to learn the
Eugene,
lessons of these other countries.
Are we
Sorry?
lucky that we're at the tail end, that Ireland never actually advanced to the stage where we were doing this to children? And we're just so lucky. And what's happening is the tide is turning. The wisdom is, coming to the fact that actually this isn't right. We do need to put a halt to it and look at this and ask questions and examine this. And we have the transgender activists in Ireland who have been looking to have this in place, this, gender affirming care, in only that it's slipping out of their grasp, isn't it? Like, it was just there. They were going to get it in Ireland, and now the tide is turning. And Dr. O'Shea, thank goodness, got his show on Prime Time, and it's really just holding back the tide, saying, actually, aren't we lucky? Aren't we lucky Ireland never went down this road, now that we now know it's not the way to go forward?
Yeah, no, we are. We were really fortunate. We do sit at the end of it. We're one of the last countries, I guess, in Western Europe, or in the English-speaking world, because this is in New Zealand, it's in Australia, etc. as well. And we are very fortunate, but we're not out of the woods here. As I said, we don't have a political opposition in this country at the moment, not a viable one, because all the parties in the Oireachtas, with the exception of 10 TDs, are bought into all of this. Sinn Féin are bought into all of this. So there is no opposition apart from the 10 independents that we have in the Dáil at the moment.
Yeah, Ireland is in the belly of the beast, so we're lucky we're at the tailwind, where not many children here have yet been harmed. But Ireland is in the belly of the beast with the United Nations World Economic Forum and Agenda 2030. You can go by charity shop windows, you can go by little parks in the country, and you'll see the big rainbow Sustainable Development Goal, SDG. And much of this ideology is actually being pushed through Agenda 2030 and those Sustainable Development Goals that many people think it's all about biodiversity and bee and pollination and keeping the world clean. When you dig into the detail, a lot of the transgender ideology and collapsing and fracturing society through confusing children is all part of the Sustainable Development Goals. And Ireland, not many people know this either, that a few weeks ago, I think it was about a month ago, Leo Varadkar was over in New York for a meeting, which was to discuss the halfway point of Agenda 2030 goals. And Ireland, out of 193 countries, I believe it was selected to be co-chair of this meeting in New York. So Leo Varadkar was in the cockpit boasting about how Ireland is like 80% of the way for the Agenda 2030 goals, because that was the halfway meeting to 2030. And a lot of these sustainable development goals are pushing this ideology on children. A lot of them are pushing the One World Health, which Ireland wants to hand over the reins to the WHO. So, you know, although we're at the back end, like Lisa said, we have to really be aware that Ireland are really driving this Agenda 20. We're like the good old boy in Europe, and a lot of our leaders in the Dáil, like Leo Varadkar, Roderick O'Gorman, Helen McEntee, they are auditioning for their next big global role. They're not listening to the people like us, to the people who are concerned with what's happening. They're turning a blind eye, just reporting into WHO and United Nations. So we're in the belly of the beast, Ireland is, and we have to push back harder on this.
Unfortunately, we are. So I think my message for anybody watching is inform yourself. You don't have to believe what we're talking about on this video. Go and search. The links are there. There's plenty of others. People do need to inform themselves on these topics because it's serious. I mean, I grew up, I remember years ago, I think when I was going to school back in the 70s, there was a song. I'm trying to think, it was, you know, and one of the words of the song was leave the kids alone.
Yeah.
You know, it was Pink Floyd. For anybody who's old enough to remember Pink Floyd.
I think we played that at a few of our events outside Leinster House when we had the big speakers. We had a few of those blasting into the Dáil, hey, leave our kids alone. So I think it's probably a good time to wrap up. I know we tried to keep it to 45 minutes, but the information was absolutely amazing. I think it's very evident, Eugene, that you're an engineer, you research everything, you have references for everything, you have all the facts. We'll post all the links in the description, but it might be good to do another one as well. I know I've heard you speak on where this is being funded, because a lot of people think that this, you know, ideology, it's all about being kind. It's all under the D&I, diversity, inclusion. It's all kind, stop bullying. But really, it's not a grassroots movement about kindness. This is kindness. This is a very heavily funded global movement being pushed. So I think it'd be great if we could do another section, another part 2 for you to share with all the funding behind it, all the power behind this. It's not grassroots in any way. It's not what the people want. It's coming very much from the globalists down into on the streets of Ireland.
Yeah, and I think there's other aspects we touched on the WHO. I think people do need to understand some of their sexuality guidelines. For example, you mentioned them. They're there. I don't have a link. We don't have a link. We should probably put a link in the description for those so people can look at them themselves. We don't have to make it up. Those guys, they're there. Most of these source documents exist. You know, they're there and people can take a look at them. So maybe we'll add that to the link in the description as well.
You can Google it, WHO Standards of Sexuality, and on page, I think 30 something of the document, there's a matrix, and it has by age what the WHO want to bring into teaching. And this document was also used by Ireland in developing some of our curriculum.
Yeah, unfortunately,
So, well, that's great.
So I think, that's
great.
Thanks.
I'll stop recording now, and we'll do part 2.